The Cleveland Browns entered this offseason knowing one thing above all else. If they truly want their new offensive vision to succeed, they must surround quarterback Shedeur Sanders with reliable weapons. The franchise spent the past year reshaping its identity, committing to a younger quarterback who brings mobility, confidence, and an aggressive downfield mindset. But building around a young quarterback is never just about the player under center. It's about the ecosystem around him: protection, play calling, and most importantly, receivers who can be trusted in critical moments. And that's exactly why the possibility of signing veteran wide receiver Mike Evans has suddenly become such a fascinating storyline. For years, the Browns have quietly operated with a somewhat rigid internal philosophy when it comes to roster construction. One of those unofficial rules has been avoiding major investments in players over the age of 30. The logic behind that philosophy isn't complicated. The NFL is a young man's league, and long-term financial commitments to aging players can often backfire quickly. Decline can arrive overnight, injuries become more frequent, and contracts that once looked reasonable can suddenly become burdens. But every rule has its exceptions, and Mike Evans might be the kind of player who forces a team to reconsider its principles. At 32 years old, Evans isn't just another aging wide receiver searching for one last payday. He's one of the most consistent pass catchers the league has seen over the past decade. Since entering the NFL, Evans has built a resume that places him among the most productive receivers of his era. Year after year, regardless of the quarterback throwing him the ball, Evans has produced. His combination of size, route discipline, and elite contested catchability has made him one of the most dependable red zone threats in football. For a team like Cleveland, that type of reliability could be invaluable, because if there's one thing the Browns struggled with last season, it was consistency at the wide receiver position. The offense frequently found itself stuck in difficult third down situations where Sanders had to force throws into tight coverage. Receivers struggled to create separation at key moments and contested catches. The kind of plays that keep drives alive often turned into missed opportunities. The result was an offense that showed flashes of explosiveness, but rarely sustained momentum for 4 full quarters. Jerry Jeudy, who was expected to play a major role in the passing attack, simply didn't deliver the level of production the team hoped for. There were games where he disappeared entirely from the stat sheet. Other receivers on the roster provided occasional sparks, but none established themselves as a clear, dependable number one option. That's where the idea of adding Mike Evans begins to make sense. From a purely football perspective, Evans checks almost every box Cleveland needs. He's a proven deep threat, but he's also incredibly effective on intermediate routes and back shoulder throws, areas where young quarterbacks often rely heavily on their top receivers. More importantly, Evans brings a skill set that complements Sanders' strengths. Shedeur Sanders thrives when he can extend plays and push the ball vertically. His arm talent allows him to attack tight windows downfield, but that style of play requires receivers who can win physical battles at the catch point. Evans has built his entire career on exactly that. Imagine the scenario. 3rd and 8, the defense brings pressure, Sanders rolls out to buy time, and he launches a high throw toward the sideline where Evans uses his 6'5" frame to shield the defender and bring the ball down. That's the type of play Cleveland lacked far too often last season. But the potential connection between Evans and Sanders is only part of the story. There's another layer that makes this potential signing particularly intriguing: the presence of Browns head coach Todd Monken. Before arriving in Cleveland, Monken spent time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where he worked directly with Evans. During that stretch from 2016 to 2018, the two developed a productive partnership that helped define Tampa Bay's offensive identity at the time. Under Monken's system, Evans thrived as the centerpiece of a high-volume passing attack. In those 3 seasons, Evans recorded nearly 4,000 receiving yards and 25 touchdowns, earning his first 2 Pro Bowl selections. Tampa Bay's offense led the league in passing yards during one of those seasons and consistently ranked among the most explosive units in football. That history matters. In the NFL, familiarity can be incredibly valuable. Coaches prefer players who understand their offensive philosophy, their terminology, and their expectations. Evans wouldn't need months to adjust to Monken's scheme. In many ways, he would already know how the system is supposed to function. For a Browns offense trying to accelerate its development around a young quarterback, that type of instant chemistry could be a major advantage. Of course, none of this matters if the financial side of the equation doesn't work. The Browns are currently operating with limited salary cap flexibility. Reports indicate it has somewhere between $30 million and $35 million in available cap space, but that money has to cover multiple roster needs, not just wide receiver. And while Evans may be entering the later stages of his career, elite receivers still command significant contracts. The current market for top wideouts ranges anywhere from roughly $22 million per year to more than $40 million annually for the very top players in the league. Even if Evans doesn't demand a deal at the very top of that range, he will still represent a sizable financial commitment. That raises an important question for Cleveland's front office. Is investing heavily in a 32-year-old receiver the right move for a team still trying to build long-term stability? The answer may ultimately depend on how the Browns view their competitive window. If the organization believes Sanders is ready to take a significant step forward right now, then surrounding him with proven veterans could accelerate the team's progress dramatically. A reliable target like Evans could help stabilize the offense, reduce pressure on the young quarterback, and provide leadership inside the locker room. Veteran receivers often play a critical role in a young quarterback's development. They help with route adjustments, communicate coverage reads on the sideline, and provide a level of professionalism that younger players learn from. Evans has spent his career in competitive locker rooms and playoff environments. That experience could be invaluable for a Browns team still searching for consistency. But there's also risk. Age eventually catches up with every player, even the great ones. Receivers in their early 30s can still perform at a high level, but the margin for decline grows smaller each season. A major injury or sudden drop in athleticism could turn a large contract into a difficult situation for the franchise. And then there's the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers themselves haven't completely closed the door on bringing Evans back. Reports suggest the organization has interest in extending his contract and keeping one of its most iconic offensive players in the building. If Tampa Bay presents a competitive offer, Evans might ultimately decide that staying with the franchise that drafted him is the best move. That uncertainty means Cleveland can't rely solely on the possibility of landing him. Still, the very fact that the Browns are reportedly willing to consider bending their own roster-building philosophy says a lot about how much they value the idea of adding a proven playmaker. For years, Cleveland's offense has lacked a true, dominant outside receiver who can dictate defensive coverage. Defenses have often been able to crowd the middle of the field and focus on stopping the running game without worrying about a consistent deep threat. Mike Evans changes that equation immediately. His presence alone forces defensive coordinators to adjust their game plans. Safeties have to provide help over the top. Cornerbacks must respect the possibility of jump balls in the red zone. Those subtle shifts in coverage can open opportunities for the rest of the offense, including younger receivers who suddenly face less pressure and fewer double teams. For Shedeur Sanders, that could make the difference between a season filled with growing pains and one that accelerates his development as an NFL starter. Ultimately, the Browns face a decision that goes beyond numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about philosophy versus opportunity. Do they stick to the long-standing rule of avoiding players over 30, prioritizing long-term roster youth and financial flexibility? Or do they make an exception for a player whose resume, production, and familiarity with their coaching staff make him a uniquely attractive option? The answer will reveal a lot about how Cleveland sees its future and how urgently the franchise wants to build an offense capable of competing right now. Because if the Browns truly believe Shedeur Sanders is their quarterback of the future, giving him a weapon like Mike Evans might be the bold move that helps turn potential into reality.